Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Film Ball, and this is part 2 of my Cannes vlogs. Now, you might notice I'm not currently at the movie theater like I was in the last one, and I figured it might be a little bit nicer to get this beautiful view of the Côte d'Azur rather than me sitting in an IMAX theater all day. So we're gonna do things a little differently. Yesterday, I saw 4 films, and the first that I got to see was Yorgos Lanthimos' new film, Kinds of Kindness.
Good afternoon, Robert. Don't just stand there, sit down. Were you waiting long?
No, 15 minutes or so.
Your hair's nice like that. Don't get it cut. Let it grow a little longer. And you've lost more weight, I think. Skinny men are the most ridiculous thing there is.
Yorgos Lanthimos is one of the best filmmakers working nowadays, and I was really excited to see him go back to his roots, to something a little hostile and something a little bit uncomfortable, and that's exactly what I got. This is his most alienating film, at least since The Lobster. Kinds of Kindness is an anthology film which tells 3 different stories, completely unrelated, but each very strange in their own ways. The first story being about a man who does not have choice in life. He's given a list of demands every day, and when he decides not to do one of the demands, his life begins to fall apart. The next story is about a police officer whose wife has gone missing at sea, and when she returns home, he becomes convinced that she is a different person than the one that left. And the final story is about a woman who's part of a cult searching for a messiah figure who can bring the dead back to life. All of these stories are completely separate. If you look at many other anthology films like The French Dispatch or A Touch of Sin, which we talked about on the channel very recently, a lot of the time anthologies will have something stringing the stories together. For example, The French Dispatch is about a newspaper similar to The New Yorker, and each of the stories is something that we might read in that paper. Or A Touch of Sin follows 4 stories of random violence in contemporary China. Here, the theme connecting these stories is very opaque. It's not really easy to see why these stories are told together. My theory at this point is each of these stories touches on love, specifically unrequited love, or the lengths that you will go to prove your love to someone else while getting nothing in return. In each story, the main characters go to extreme lengths to prove their loyalty to someone else, doing ridiculous things to prove their love and only coming up hurt in the end. It's a film about human connection and the lengths that we will go to keep people in our lives who make us feel just a little bit less alone. If you're a huge fan of The Favorite, of Poor Things, this is going to be a massive shock to the system for you. Again, this is alienating. It's weird. Characters speak with a monotone, very reminiscent of Yorgos Lanthimos' earlier films like The Lobster or Dogtooth. And in fact, outside of the main ensemble of actors, it feels like Yorgos has cast the bit parts off of Craigslist with oddballs that feel like they should be showing up in an episode of Nathan For You rather than in a major Hollywood movie. And to me, it all works beautifully. I'm still trying to figure out what some of the things in this movie mean, trying to wrap my head around each of the stories and the characters within, and I can't wait to go back to this one and watch it again and just try and catch more things. There is so many layers, and it's going to be a very rewarding watch over and over. But if you want to hear about Oscar chances, this has none. Get that out of your mind. Maybe Jesse Plemons can pick up some critic prizes here and there, but this is not a movie made for that. It's not about that. It's more than that. So just get it out of your head right now. Go and enjoy the movie. It comes out in a couple months. The next film that I saw yesterday was O Canada, directed by Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader is one of the most hit-or-miss directors working nowadays. This tells the story of Leonard Fife, a documentary filmmaker who left the United States to flee the draft in the late 1960s and now resides in Montreal, where he's dying of cancer. He's bedridden, hallucinating from his pain, and is telling the story of a life full of regrets in which we're never really sure what actually happened and what might be fabricated. The whole film is a flashback told through the framing device of an interview for a documentary film. I feel like we've seen this device used 100 other times in 100 other films. The use of the interview as a framing device to tell Leonard Fife's story, it doesn't bring anything new to the table outside of just telling us that he is dying. Seeing his life play out through these scattered memories doesn't really add anything to the story or the themes. However, you could argue that this is a way of Paul Schrader himself reflecting on his own career, reflecting on his own value as a human being, as in a way you could argue he sees himself as Leonard Fife, and he is reflecting on the value of his own life, the value of his own art, and whether he was a good person through it all. He doesn't believe that his life was full of the value that he wishes it was. In fact, it almost feels like Paul Schrader's calling himself a coward. Now, there are some really interesting elements to this film, some cool formal experimentation, but all of it's in service of a story that feels so bland. This may not be as much of a misfire as Master Gardener was, but it's dull, it's flat, it's not bringing anything to the table that I feel like we haven't seen done better in other films. So this one was a big misfire for me, which is kind of expected from Paul Schrader at this point. The next film I saw was On Becoming a Guinea Fowl, which is a co-production between the United Kingdom and Zambia, and tells the story of a Zambian family coming together for a funeral of one of the uncles. We follow a woman who has come home from the United Kingdom to be with family when she finds the body of her uncle on the side of the road, and she feels some complex feelings about this. While coming together with her massive extended family to grieve the death of this uncle, we get the feeling that there might be something more under the surface, and we quickly learn that there are a lot of secrets this family is holding. This film truly blew me away in its discussion of how oftentimes people will not protect others just to avoid having to address very uncomfortable topics, uncomfortable conversations. Throughout the film, we see many of these young women talk about the trauma that they suffered because of this man, and we continually see how the family will go out of their way to protect him, but not to listen to them. It's a genuinely beautiful film about the value of standing up for others, standing up for yourself, having the uncomfortable conversations, calling out the predators. These are conversations that need to be had, and it's shot in such a poetic and interesting manner. It blends humor with the humanity of all of these people grieving and suffering, going into the moral complexities of feeling grief for someone that you hated, watching your family grieve for someone who hurt you deeply throughout your life. It's also incredibly interesting to learn a little bit about Zambian funeral customs, as the film really dives into the traditions that come along with a Zambian funeral and mourning for a Zambian funeral. I can't recommend this one highly enough. It is an incredible film. Go watch it as soon as it comes available. It is being distributed by A24, and I'm really glad that they picked up a film this interesting. And the final film that I saw yesterday was 3 Kilometers to the End of the World, a Romanian film directed by Emanuel Parvu. This tells the story of a teenage boy in a rural village in Romania who is attacked and brutally beaten one night because he's seen kissing a boy on the street. And the film doesn't follow the incident, it follows his parents and sees their story as they go from concerned parents looking for justice to becoming monsters in their own right. These parents go from seeking justice to participating in the cover-up and essentially doing everything they can to quote-unquote help their child by bringing in a priest, by sending him to military school, and essentially doing everything that they can other than just accepting him for who he is. A lot of people are going to accuse this film of being nothing more than just trauma, and they're not wrong. We've seen this film so many times before with violent acts being inflicted on a queer person. If seeing these stories of pain and trauma is something that you've had enough of, there's no need to seek out 3 Kilometers to the End of the World. But what I will say about this one is it's this very familiar story told in a very strong way. The dialogue is exceptional, the performances are lived in and complex, especially from the parent characters, and the direction is very mature and introspective, taking lots of time throughout each scene. This film was fine. It wasn't one that stood out to me as one of the best of the festival, but for what it's trying to be, it does it pretty well. The question is just, is this a film that you're willing to stomach? And that actually is just the end of this little video. Just because of scheduling, I ended up not seeing any movies today. I'm back at the festival tomorrow, and I'm going to be seeing many, many movies, including Emilia Perez, the musical with Selena Gomez and Zoe Saldana. I'm going to be seeing Caught by the Tides, and in the next few days, I'm also going to be seeing Limonov, The Apprentice, many more movies. And make sure you stay tuned to this channel for continued Cannes coverage. But until next time, my name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Film Ball.